on this episode of Raising the Wild Ones podcast. We got Dr. Judd Burton is here with us again today for a third time, fourth time. He's been on a couple other times, and we've had a ton of fun with him.
So literally, God is in the first two verses he's establishing order in his creation, and he's at odds with this primal rebellious force, the chaos dragon, sometimes referred to as in Hebrew tradition as the Leviathan, or the also called Rahab. He chose the days of Noah. I think there's a reason he did that, because it's not just about the abject wickedness, the wicked state that man had come to at that point, but the conditions, some of the conditions and supernatural entities that were on the earth at the time as well, which included the Watchers, the Nephilim, and all of these chimera that would fall under the Nephilim umbrella.
Raising the Wild Ones podcast.
I forgot to ask you, Dr. Burton, but do you have a dad joke? If not, I think Caleb's got us hooked up with one.
Well, I've got two.
Now I'm on the spot and I can't think of one.
That's the worst.
Here, I'll say my first one here.
Go for it.
Why did the cowboy adopt a dash hound?
I give up.
He wanted to get along, little doggy.
Just not to mess with you there, but I'm pretty sure it's a dachshund, not dash.
I said that wrong.
Dachshund.
Yeah,
For
I
sure.
said that completely wrong. I messed that one up.
You
cut that.
have offended dachshund owners on two different levels.
Hey, I'm okay with it. Yeah, my bad. Let's cut
No,
that.
we're not,
Let's take
we're
take
not
two.
cutting that at all.
Why did
It
Humpty
is
Dumpty
in there?
Yeah. Why did Humpty Dumpty have a great fall?
Why?
Because his summer was miserable. There we go. I brought us back.
Wah.
We're back.
Yeah.
And we're back now. Hey, I won't lie. Our Texas summer has not been brutal this year.
It's hot
just
now.
throwing that up there.
It still hadn't been bad.
I mean, still middle of August, and I think the high today was like 94, at least in Brownwood it was.
Yeah, the summer of 2022 was the summer that Tartarus opened up on Earth.
I think I remember that one. That one was that the one we had our first 100-degree day like mid-May? And then
It started in May, and it was 3 digits until the end of August.
Oh,
yes.
I remember that summer. That was just total side note, that was the first summer I was working in a cabinet shop that had no air conditioning, so we just had big bay doors and fans, and I was why am I even working here?
That had to have been like working in a blast furnace with those fans moving all that hot air around.
Oh, it was brutal. It was so bad. We're using drills that you grab the top of the drill, after you use it for a little bit, and it like almost burns your hand, and you're like, I think I started actually showing up to work at like 5 a.m. and then bugging out at 1. So
Yeah, that was rough.
So just like a classic Texas podcast, we talk about the Texas heat for the first 2 or 3 minutes of the episode. But as we kind of jump in here, we got Dr. Judd Burton is here with us again today for a third time, fourth time. He's been on a couple other times, and we've had a ton of fun with him. And pretty much today, what we're going to talk about is kind of this idea of like biblical creatures, and then almost maybe even see if we can throw in some of the stuff of like genetically modified creatures and stuff like that too, of like today, like in Dallas, the company in Dallas that is genetically modifying dire wolves, which is kind of its own little thing. But those are kind of what we're going to talk about. But in totally honesty, wherever Dr. Burton wants to take it, we're just going to ask questions and go there. So I guess we'll start with biblical creatures.
You can't forget they're also genetically modifying, or they made a new species, and it's like the mammoth rat or something. Isn't that right?
I never heard of that one.
They did something like that too. Yeah, I'll look that up.
Caleb's on the Google right there. He's going to tear it up. So, Dr. Burton, do you want to just kind of start us off with maybe some biblical creature type stuff? And because I know, like, I don't know a ton of stuff, but like kind of right off the top of my head, I think of like the Lilith demon. Or here we go, Caleb.
Okay, they engineered a new species, and it's called the woolly mammouse. So it's like a woolly mouse.
Well,
Is
shades
that
of Dr. Ian Malcolm are coming into my head.
and it's the same company that brought the dire wolves. Yeah, they came up with the woolly
Yeah, it's Colossal
mammouse.
Biosciences. Yeah,
Yes.
Colossal Biosciences in Plano, just south of me here.
Yeah.
We should try to go. Maybe we'll go see you, Dr. Burton, and then we'll also try to get a tour of the place in Plano. I don't think they'll do tours, so
We
Yeah,
could do
best
a
of luck
live
with that.
podcast.
maybe we'll ask them to be on the podcast and see how
Yeah.
that one
As
goes.
as long as you're happy doing it on the sidewalk, I'm sure there'll be no problem.
We're here outside of man. Well, what do you kind of want to talk about first, Dr. Burton? And we'll just kind of follow you and see where you want to take her.
Well, the tone that I'm reading here is biblical cryptids, not necessarily all creatures great and small, but the weird stuff,
Yeah.
the kind of wacky stuff. Um, yeah, well, there's you don't even have to look past the first page of Genesis, and there's some strange stuff going on. Even in the first two verses of Genesis 1, where it's talking about God hovering over the waters of the deep, and that the earth was formless and void and without form. Uh, just the reading of that in English is really inadequate to grasp the new, or I should say, the way that it has historically been translated into English is it really kind of insufficient to capture the nuance of what's going on there. If you just, if, I mean, it's not an. What I'm saying is, it's not an incorrect translation. Like the one we have in most translations, but a little deeper dig into the etymology of, or rather just the straight definition and sort of historical linguistics behind words used in here, drawing people's attention to the void and without form phrase. That's in Hebrew. That's the tohu and abohu. Tohu is derivative of the Akkadian Tiamat. Um, so Tiamat was the chaos dragon in Mesopotamian mythology. So literally, God is in the first two verses is he's establishing order in his creation, and there's been he's at odds with this primal rebellious force, um, the chaos dragon, um, sometimes referred to as in Hebrew tradition as the Leviathan or the also called Rahab. Um, so most people would read this passage and not think twice about it being anything more than God bringing order. But God, and He is doing that. But Yahweh is in fact in a battle against this primal force that we can only understand as we look at the language a little more closely. And as I said, this this fallen entity, this fallen Elohim, um, shows up in later portions of the Old Testament and arguably in the New Testament, particularly in Revelation, as the dragon. And of course, there are analogs for this in the mythologies around the world. I mean, even just the bare bones linguistic analysis of that passage gives us the connection to the languages of Mesopotamia, particularly Akkadian, and by proxy Sumerian. But take for instance in Phoenician, the most geographically proximate mythological tradition, the Phoenicians uh, called this entity Baton. It's where the old nation of Bashan in the Old Testament gets its name. It literally means the land of the serpent. In fact, in Phoenician, the BTN translation is, or transliteration rather, is the same in Hebrew as the Eltian, the Leviathan. The Lotan uh, was a basically analogous to Tiamat, or uh, the Hydra, or Typhon, in fact, in Greek mythology. And by proxy, these serpents and sea monsters and dragons have long been engines of chaos in mythological traditions, and their dwelling places, their abodes, usually watery, and especially the sea, or Yam in Hebrew, um, who is also a Phoenician deity. The sea is this in the ancient world is a very vibrant symbol of chaos. So right out of the gate, you've got some high strangeness in terms of strange creatures in the Bible.
I, I guess one of the things that I'm kind of thinking about, you talk about the sea and kind of like bringing in like
Mhm.
the Leviathan, which is, the chaos beast, is like the vastness of our oceans and the fact that we have, we don't know really much of anything about the deepest form of our ocean. And it's like you think about these Greek mythological, like the Odyssey and all that kind of stuff, where they encounter
Mhm.
these beasts, and we just like kind of write that off as, oh, that's just a story they came up with. But then you even have like
Mhm.
weird stuff happening today, and it's like, so I mean, this may be a weird question to kind of throw out there, but like, could these things still be out there today, just like out in the ocean, or how do we kind of like rectify and work with that stuff?
I don't see why not. On the one hand, there's a sort of practical, mariner's fear. It's not even hyperbole to say that, ancient sailors and fishermen were superstitious, and we inherit that legacy, with the, we still use the phrase, fish tale or fish story,
Hmm.
and that's where that comes from, people coming back into port and telling about these things. And they may have been tall tales in some instances, but to completely write all of them off just sort of destroys the merit of oral tradition.
And also
So,
we talked to Bobby Whitfield, is a
mhm.
missionary in Africa that we've talked to, and he talks a lot about how some of those cultures over there,
Oh,
and I'm assuming a lot more cultures around the world, what did he say, Dustin? Like basically those
um,
cultures, they believe there's demons in the water, or it's
yeah,
like
because
demonic
Yes.
spirits
he
from the
lives
water.
right on the
Yeah.
he lives right on the coast, and they go out fishing every day, and they always talk about how they're always just scared of the deep, and they're scared of the water because there's
And they
demons in the
basically
water,
think they're going to die out there.
and
Yeah.
they're just gonna die. Yeah.
And then
Where
it's like a
where
fight against these demons.
where was he a missionary?
He's currently in the southern coast of Tanzania is where he is at right
Okay,
now.
yeah. Um, yeah, and the that's that's not an uncommon belief, the idea that the gods or the spirits lived under the waters. Even to circle back to Mesopotamian mythology, the Absu was the watery underworld where the spirits of their dead kings lived, the Rabbah, which is where the Hebrews got the word Rephaim from.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and as distant geographically and historically, uh, a culture, there are Caribbean peoples, Afro-Caribbean peoples who believe the same thing. In fact, in Vodun and Voodoo, uh, their Loas lived under the sea. Um, and this is an idea that's expressed in a number of Native American beliefs. The Cherokee and some of the eastern woodland tribes believe that the waterways were places where these spirits lived. And a lot of the Plains Indians that descended from eastern woodland tribes, like the Sioux, had a whole pantheon of underwater animistic and totemistic beings. So, like an underwater panther and an underwater thunderbird. Um, and to refer back to the Cherokee again and the southeastern tribes, another reason why the Trail of Tears was so tragic um, was not just. I mean, yeah, there's the loss of life and the you know, poorly executed law of Indian removal, but um, and arguably poorly conceived law. Uh, but the direction of west was considered to be the direction of the land of the dead for the Cherokee, and of course they were following in some cases these waterways that ran east and west. Um, so yeah, that idea, that cultural map, if you will, that belief about gods and spirits under the waters is pretty ubiquitous.
And I think it's also important to point out that the importance of understanding the culture of that time, of those different times, and what they believed.
Hmm.
Because, like, we were talking to also Joel, our one of our friends who is a Hebrew scholar, and knows some
Hmm.
Hebrew, and he was talking about, those first passages. We were kind of talking about the word day in those first passages, where, young earth, old
Hmm.
earth. And he was talking
Hmm.
about how, at least in those passages, the people of that time would be, if you went back and said, okay, how old is the earth, they would be like, what are you talking about? That's not the point of this story. So, it's important
Right.
to, to go back to those and say, and look back on some of these cultures, and like get a good understanding of what they believed, and kind of how, what their thought process was in some of this. Because, like that, well, like you said in the first passage, and I've heard the stuff on the chaos dragon, but it's something, if you are not looking into, you
Hmm.
completely miss, and you miss
I
a lot
mean,
of
Sure.
that kind of stuff.
Joel mentioned the same exact thing you talked
He
about
did.
earlier with over the chaos. I mean, and how the other cultures were, defeating the chaos dragon, which I think was really cool.
Yeah.
The way y'all both kind of almost sounded that same exact stuff right there with talking about the chaos dragon.
Yeah.
Who's your friend, Joel? Just out of
Joel Ju
curiosity.
his name's Joel Justice. I don't think he's teaching Hebrew right now at Howard Payne here in Brownwood, but he was a Hebrew professor at Howard Payne here in Brownwood, a couple semesters ago. I think they've moved him to like New Testament. I think he's teaching like New and Old Testament this semester.
Oh, great, great.
But he's working on his doctorate right now in primarily in Hebrew is what he's working on right now. So
Capital.
he's an adjunct professor is what he is. But
Love it. Love it.
he's a good guy to talk to. We were really great in our last interview. We didn't give him any idea because we kind of wanted to get him off script because we didn't want him to like teach to us.
Well, that's always a danger for us egghead types.
Yeah.
We're gonna take. Gentlemen, I've been taking it a class for the last several minutes. In case you didn't know.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
And
and,
see,
and I'm I'll
yeah,
take
and I'm a
notes,
high
man. I
school
loved it.
teacher. So I'm a high school teacher. So I'm like, I get out of teacher zone when I do this.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
But I thought
I
that's
get to
really
learn.
neat. I mean, because we weren't even really talking about, creatures in that, but I
Hmm.
mean, we were just kind of talking about the creation story and then on some
Yeah.
other stuff kind of into Job a little bit too in that episode, but it was like he was talking about the chaos beast and kind of over the chaos and how all that works. And I mean, it's really cool to just think about, the ocean in that or the deep in that
Well,
sense.
it is, and this is not just an Old Testament thing. As pointed out, Jesus is doing the same thing. Um, if you fast forward from Genesis 1 to Genesis 3, we run into another serpent, right? The Nakash,
Hmm.
um, and the uh, the Genesis 3:15 prophecy about that he will bruise the seed of the woman's heel, and he will crush the serpent's head. Um, when you consider that Jesus is a Galilean ethnically, and he's most of his ministry is in Galilee, in the old region of Bashan, what was Bashan before. In fact, the Romans still call portions of it Britannia. They Latinized it. Um, Jesus is in the land of the serpent, and so every step that he takes, he's crushing the head of the serpent. When he's walking on water, he's crushing the head of
Hmm.
the Phoenician baton or Leviathan. Uh, so Jesus' ministry is an active fulfillment of the Genesis 3:15 prophecy. So the same sorts of things are going on in the New Testament. It's an there are these multiple layers to the fulfillment of that prophecy. Not only in Genesis, it's the already but not yet proposition of prophecy, uh, because it's to be ultimately fulfilled again.
I mean, I never even really thought. You made the comment about walking on water, how Jesus walked on water and
Right.
connecting those two things. And I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, I mean, it should be a no-brainer connection between the two, but I mean, especially just kind of growing up with your basic Baptist understanding, right? It's like
No,
you
we
don't
did.
ever
Yeah,
connect those things.
I come from a similar background, and it was just and not even on the radar.
Yeah.
Uh, and I mean, it didn't strip the value away from from Scripture, but it certainly doesn't give you the total picture, or at least a deeper picture of what's going on. Um, that's I'm trying to think of the verse that says it's the glory of the Lord to conceal a thing, and the glory
Oh,
of kings to reveal a thing. So,
I should
the
know that one.
Bible is constantly teaching us. God's constantly teaching us through the scriptures, um, the deeper meanings of His Word, and that's one of the good things about the day and age that we live in, is that we have so many. Uh, I mean, you can fork out the money for Logos Bible software or Olive Tree or whatever you want, but there's so much free Bible study material, good Bible study material that people can access, where you can look at this stuff. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's another example. I mean, Jesus is, as he's walking on the water, he's fulfilling the Genesis 3:15 prophecy, because of the representation of a body of water like the Sea of Galilee, but also its significance, um, to the Canaanites and the Phoenicians, in the Bell cycle of the Ugaritic material. This is one of, that is the Sea of Galilee, along with the Hula Lake, uh,
Mm.
are arguably, and I think Derek Gilbert makes a really good case for this. I agree with him, that these are the two deeps mentioned in the Bell cycle, El, that belong to the Canaanite god El. Um, it's recounted in that same Bell cycle that, he built a castle or a fortress, basically, under that body of water, and then it was a dwelling place for, um, Yam and Lotan, these sea deities, essentially. So
Trying to,
there
I mean, that's
there's there are these layers, that I firmly believe are built into Scripture, not as a game, but, um, one of the things that was one of the many interesting things about Hebrew culture, they loved riddles and parables, and of course that's borne out in Jesus' very teaching style. In one moment he's speaking in parables, and at another where he's arguably teaching in Greek, rather than Aramaic. Uh, he's using Socratic methods. Uh, so it's the Bible is always a journey. It's an expedition, and along this expedition, you're going to find these weird creatures, these weird anomalies, like the tohu, the chaos dragon, the leviathan, the nakash, you know, they're they're just littered all over the place.
I mean, one of the other things you're talking about, like the chaos creatures, one of the things I kind
Mm.
of think about too, really, and probably in my, little understanding on the matter was the Lilith creature,
Uh,
and that kind of like how does that kind of fit into the whole idea of like the chaos beast type stuff? Are they all kind of the same, or are they just kind of these different
well,
maybe entities
they're
or
rebellious. You know, they're either what the the Old Testament would call, um, watchers, Urim,
mm,
uh, or the sons of God, or their progeny, or results of physical interaction with humans or animals in some cases. Um, the of course the initial ones that spring to mind would be the Nephilim, and everything that sort of generic term covers in the pre-flood world. But there are all kinds of chimera, and the Lilith would be one of those. Uh, Lilith shows up in Isaiah chapter 34, usually translated as, and I read these translations, and it's almost like nails on a chalkboard for me. I, I don't know if that paradigm makes much sense to modern to modern
Yeah.
crowds
Hey,
because we don't
we
use
still get it.
we
Yeah,
don't
I
use
got it. Yeah.
chalkboards anymore. But yeah, I mean it's still in the vernacular in our popular language. But anyway, that's sort of what most translations sound like to me of that passage, because it's it's clearly spelled out in Hebrew there, Lilith, from the Lilitu in Mesopotamian mythology, and of course this was a cannibalistic demon. In later Jewish, now this is not canon scripture, but in later Jewish tradition, um, she is a uh, she becomes the queen of demons, and at least the characteristic of her seeking out children and infants and eating them and drinking their blood and stealing the virility of men. At least those characteristics seem to translate over to the idiom that's used in the Old Testament. She sort of, I think she's mentioned in the Psalms a couple of times too, but explicitly here in this Isaiah passage. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, this is a vampire type creature that the peoples of the ancient Near East and their neighbors firmly believed in and understood it in its demonic context. And again, there are analogs for the Lilith creature in proximate cultures. The Lamia in Greek ancient Greek culture was a similar kind of creature, blood drinking night creature, often associated with the owl.
Mm.
And the Roman Strix um, was basically an analog of the Lamia, from which the later Romanians derived the word strigoi, a word for vampire. Um, so yeah, there were certainly analogs for the Lilith in uh, neighboring cultures, and so the the idea of the night demon or the screech owl translation is not inaccurate, but it's an incomplete picture of what the Lilith was. Um, but yeah, very very strange reference in the Bible. Most people are shocked to learn that there are a number of vampire-like creatures um, in the Bible, and these are characteristics, by the way, that these post-flood later demonic entities um, inherited from the pre-flood world.
Mm.
They're demonic at their core, and so as such, they are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. Uh, these judgments are implicit in canon scripture, but they're articulated in apocryphal literature like Enoch and the Genesis Apocryphon and books like the Book of Giants and the Book of Jubilees that detail the judgment on the Watchers and their Nephilim progeny. And in Enoch in particular, there are passages that talk about the destruction of the world in the flood and the destruction of the giants, and that their spirits would basically be they would hunger and thirst and never be sated and constantly placate humanity. But they inherited these appetites from their physical forms, because we in the aforementioned literature uh, we're told that the giants fought wars not only amongst themselves but also amongst humanity. They literally ate up most of the resources that humanity had, and then they began to consume human flesh and drink blood. And so the vampire is born in this milieu and shows up in a variety of often culturally specific, culturally relevant forms in later cultures around the world.
And I thought I would jump back real quick and where you were talking about Lilith, that verse, y'all may have mentioned it, but Isaiah 34:14. And
Right.
you mentioned several of those translations. It's kind of interesting, some of those, as far as screech owl. So
Mm-hmm.
like the King James version, that'll say screech owl.
Mm-hmm.
ESV, night bird. New King James I'm looking at is night creature. The Catholic Bible keeps it Lilith. So, but there's multiple translations of that, I believe.
Yeah. I want to say that it may be the old American Standard. I don't know if it's the New American Standard that kept the translation too.
Yeah, I didn't have that one pulled up.
It's the exception rather than the rule, I think.
I think I've got the old American Standard on my shelf. I think
my Greek professor loved the old American Standard. It was like his go-to.
I think that's the only reason I have one is because of my Greek professor as well.
Right. God bless our Greek professors. But the Lilith, of course, is not the only, a strange element of that passage. She's paired with the Sherim, the hairy ones.
Oh, that's I wanted to ask about that too. Yeah.
These are goat demons. Not unlike, of course, they're also referenced in earlier in the Old Testament. Moses and company encountered them on their journey from Egypt to the Promised Land. And in fact, there's an entire region of the Levant, a seer, that arguably could be associated directly with these shedding. But if we needed any clarification as to what their form was, we have to look no further than the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament that was produced in the 3rd and 2nd century BC Alexandria. The clarification is quite expressive in that it's rendered as satyr, and of course the satyr from Greek mythology is the
Pan. It's Pan,
like
right?
like the figure Pan, exactly.
Yeah.
And this was a line of thinking that I followed in my dissertation that I wrote on Peneus, which was a site that was devoted to the god Pan in northern Israel, just at the foot of Mount Hermon, which I'm sure that we talked about maybe on the first episode that I was on the podcast.
I think so.
At any rate, these goat demons were well known in that region. And they went by a number of different names. There were deities that were worshipped by the Amorites and the Assyrians, like the Adzaga, the Odds or Uds was another one, a cognate with names like Azazel, one of the fallen watchers in the Book of Enoch, and who's also mentioned in the context of the atonement sacrifice in Leviticus.
And that goat demon.
Another.
I was going to say real quick, that goat demon, it's Leviticus 17:7, and like the King James, the English Standard Version, it says, "So they shall no more sacrifice their sacrifices to goat demons, after whom they whore," is what it says. This shall be a statute forever. So that's where that's mentioned in Leviticus 17:7. So I wanted to throw that in there.
Absolutely. The Amorites, their very name actually comes from a deity called Maru, and Maru is a shepherd god that's often depicted as having goat attributes. The Assyrians had a demon called Bedu, which is probably phonetically related to Pan. The land of Uds that Job lived in A number of scholars have posited that this is the old region of Bashan at the foot of Mount Hermon, which would also be would be relative and significant to this idea of goat demons. Um, and of course, these types of chimera are prolific in not only old world mythology, but in cases in let's say post contact folklore in the New World. So whether it's Faunus or Februaris or um, the what's the one I'm thinking of? The Germanic Krampus,
Oh,
or
oh,
the
yeah,
Puck. You
Yeah.
know,
yeah,
they're
yeah, yeah, yeah.
variations on this theme, and show up in they show up in the Old Testament, and arguably Jesus's confrontation uh, with these demonic forces, these fallen forces, when he calls them out at Caesarea Philippi. So you have the good shepherd versus the God of shepherds um, in the Caesarea Philippi episode in Mark 16 and Mark chapter 8.
Well, it's also you start kind of talking about the idea of like goat demons and stuff, and the first thing I think about in my mind is the goat man. And it's really funny about that is I mean, I'll say some of these places which you guys will all get it because y'all are from Texas, but I grew up like in San Angelo, and then I
Mm-hmm.
started as a young kid like deer hunting a lot outside
Mm-hmm.
of Ballinger and Miles is kind of was the area that we deer hunted in, and I
Sure.
remember hearing stories like all growing up about the goat man. And
Uh
it's
huh.
like, and you think like being a little like 14-year-old kid out deer hunting by himself, like just sitting under this tree going, man, I really hope I don't see the goat man. But I mean, it was like almost this idea of like some of those stories I will say kind of looking back were just, oh yeah, maybe trying to like scare me as a kid or mess with me. But some of
Mm-hmm.
the time when people were talking about it, it was like, no, you watch out for this thing. This thing's
Yeah.
out there, you
Yeah.
know, which is real kind of
Well.
interesting. You kind of brought in the whole idea of because like even like as a kid and growing up and not really until recently, I never would put like two and two together that
Mm-hmm.
like it's a demonic entity, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily just a weird half goat thing that's out on
You
the
know, and
river or whatever.
growing up, I never heard of goat man, but I heard of the chupacabra
Mm-hmm.
who likes
Mm.
to suck blood out of goats' heads, right?
Sure. Well, you know, I wrote about the Goat Man in the Paranormal Big Country because in Merkel, I grew up with the same stories. Uh, and there was a place south of Merkel called Devil's Backbone. Ominously enough, it was supposedly a haunt of the Goat Man. Um, and like you say, you could maybe write off a portion of these stories, but some people were so adamant about it um, uh, that you would almost think they had direct experience of um, coming in contact with Goatman, and
Well,
there were there were this story or these stories proliferated throughout Texas in the wake of the sighting of the Lake Worth monster. In
oh, I've
fact,
heard about
the
that too.
late late great Jim Morris was the journalist that wrote about the Lake Worth monster, um, and it was all of the sightings recounted that it had the torso of a man and the head of a goat and the legs of a goat.
Well,
And when
and you,
I remember when I went to Cisco Junior, when it was Cisco Junior College, when I started there, of course there were students from all over the state there, and I had a number of conversations with people about Goat Man, and it was ev- almost every corner of Texas had a they had their own Goat Man story.
and I mean it's just interesting because I remember, talking to kids, and yeah, you may hear the story here and there from a kid about, oh, I saw the goat man when I was deer hunting yesterday, but it was weird because it always had like a different feel to it when like an old timer would come up, and just
Right.
start going, well, you watch out, and it's almost like, wait a minute, I half messed, figured my buddy Jimmy over there would be messing with me, and here in a minute he's gonna like put on a goat head and he's gonna jump out and scare me while I'm deer hunting. But I don't think old man Higgins is gonna do that.
Sure.
And it's just it's just interesting and really kind of wild to kind of put all those pieces together from just like, being a little kid hearing this stuff deer hunting, in Central Texas and thinking, well, wait a minute, that's this biblical, and it kind of can
Yeah,
come
well,
back over into
it
here
it
too.
is, and the big country is just replete with its own interesting supernatural history. I have material to write two or three more books actually. In addition to so before it's all over with, there'll probably be three or four volumes of the paranormal big country.
Whenever you write those, let me know. I've got the first one, and I've read that one. My son, I think, is actually reading it right now. But
Uh-huh.
whenever you write those, I'll be right there.
Outstanding.
Well, what do you got? You look like you're thinking about something over there, Caleb.
Oh, I was thinking we could shift the last few minutes of this conversation, talk a little bit about, we've talked about the chimera, which if some of our listeners may not know that, which that's basically just something that has two different sets of DNA, correct? And
Hmm.
you can have mythological chimera, things like what we were just talking about, goat man, it may be real, it may be mythology. There may, um, and then there's like what's happening with the dire wolves. They're mixing DNA, or the woolly mouse. I can't say that, mouse. They're like mixing different DNA from different animals and creating these actual, like the definition would be a chimera. So how
Hmm.
does some of that new stuff that's happening with colossal biosciences, I believe was the how does this tie into what's going on there, do you think, and what's happening with that company and what they're doing with the dire wolves and creating new species of mice? Or I'm not exactly sure what they're working on next. I've heard that, but I got to look that up. So how does all this tie in with
Right.
that?
Well, yeah, the Colossal Biosciences out of Plano, Texas, is interesting case. Um, their first project was the first one that came under public attention was the proposed reintroduction of woolly mammoths into our biosphere, specifically Siberia, all under the auspices of environmentalism and trying to help global warming. I'm not exactly sure how that was supposed to work, but yeah, these were megafauna that went extinct at the end of the Pleistocene. Um, and then these public projects like the reintroduction of the recreation of the dire wolf, which has also been extinct since the Pleistocene, um, are rather interesting because they pose ethical questions about science, and then secondly, they're ramifications that I think believers need to be aware of as well. Um, Jesus in Matthew 24, talks about the the circumstances of the return of his return being like the days of Noah. Um, I don't I don't think that's an accident. I mean, Jesus never made an accidental statement. It was all purposeful. He could have picked any number of passages from the Old Testament to illustrate, just the thief in the night kind of tonality, but he chose the days of Noah. I think there's a reason he did that because it's not just about the abject wickedness, the wicked state that man had come to at that point, um, but the conditions, some of the conditions and supernatural entities that were on the earth at the time as well, which included the Watchers, the Nephilim, and all of these chimera that would fall under the Nephilim umbrella. But you also had um, in the pre-flood world, and I firmly believe from my own research and work with my peers and colleagues, um, that the Noahic time frame coincides with the period before the Younger Dryas cataclysm, and this would be the late Neolithic period, um, so or Mesolithic, really. Uh, at any rate, the kind when you look at the kinds of animals that were on the earth at that time, you still had these big megafauna like mastodons and woolly mammoth and bison antiguus and bison latifrans, and not just not just prey animals, but you had large predator animals too, like the short-faced bear, was bigger and faster than the grizzly bear.
Mhm.
Um, the species of in the old world and the new world, species of saber-toothed cats, and of course the dire wolves. Uh, and so this is just what we know visibly about what colossal bioscience is. What's to do is the reintroduction of the mastodon, and potentially even who knows what they want to do with dire wolves. I think that's a bad idea, because just wolves are problematic in greater, in big populations. Um,
I mean, didn't they
as we're
reintroduce
seeing,
wolves to
yes,
Yellowstone and like
that's
it
about
went totally south, right?
that's exactly what I was pointing to. So there's the ethical question about the reintroduction. There's amongst the other projects in the queue for colossal biosciences, they also want to recreate a population of Neanderthals and give them cultural and political autonomy.
Hmm.
All
And
right.
they
That would be cool.
they have all kinds of
On
government
their,
funding and
yeah.
Department of Defense funding to make. And this is a direct quote. I'd have to find the article, but I remember reading this because I wrote it down, took a whole page of notes about it. Custom biologics,
Oh,
whatever that means.
Yeah.
That's a pretty broad painting with a pretty broad brushstroke. But
And
um,
if you look on their website, there's real quick, I'll say
mhm.
it shows on their website some of the species: woolly mammoth, the thylacine, which is the Tasmanian tiger, which has been
Right.
extinct since 1936, but
Uh-huh.
the dodo bird, the
Hmm.
dire wolf, which they've already done that one, and then the moa, which is a bird, kind of looks like an emu,
Hmm.
that went extinct. So though in the late 13th century. So those are just a few of the things that they say that they're working on at the moment.
Right. And we're not, we're of course not privy to
Yes, yeah,
the
that's the
details of
yeah.
what else, and that's the potential danger of that. But um, just the just the recreation of these creatures um, has a very Days of Noah kind of feel to it, which is why I think it at least bare minimum it should be of interest in terms of how this fits the niche of biblical prophecy and its potential fulfillment. Because if Jesus is using phrases like the days of Noah to describe his return, these are signs I think that people should be aware of.
I mean,
It's not just you know it's not just the what ostensibly seems to be innocuous, the recreation of these species, um, but it's what we don't know. Because
well,
when have companies that have government contracts, even if even if those projects are for our protection, or for the good of many, when have they ever been forthcoming about all of the details?
I mean,
Mhm.
there's a ton of stuff that's just coming to my mind of, well, this project, that project, all these things that were behind the scenes. This is what they were really trying to do versus this is what they said they were trying to do. And then you don't find anything out until 50, 60, 70 years later down the road when you're like, oh, wait, they were actually, trying to do this thing over. And I mean, you made a
Mm-hmm.
comment earlier about like what custom biologics or personal biologics and
Yeah.
stuff. And
Uh-huh.
that reminded me from you remember Caleb, we interviewed, where was that at? That was in Abilene, right? The the Discovery Museum in Abilene, right?
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
And she was talking like super soldier type
Yeah.
stuff. I mean, is that
Uh-huh.
I mean, I guess this is all just speculation until I hear in a minute when I send an email to Colossal, over here and see if they'll come on the podcast. Probably not happening, but
Worth a shot.
what's the worst they're
Yeah.
gonna say? No.
Yeah, that's it.
But I mean, it's
Yeah,
just
but the super soldier question is, it's as old as it's as old as time. really.
Yeah.
But now we actually have the capacity to make some of that a reality. Um, and my concern is that the super soldier we get is not going to be Captain America.
Hmm.
That it's you have to just just on a philosophical level, people need to ask, and these are questions that most of these companies don't care about. They're not bound by the same kind of ethical concerns. They should be. You would think ostensibly they would be, but they're not. They have a sort of Promethean mania about it, if you will, um, so that even with the best of intentions, the products of their research could be weaponized quite easily,
Yeah. Man.
and not for our betterment, I think.
Yeah. Well, we're at about an hour and 15 minutes or so, or just a little bit here, and this has been an awesome. I'm just every time we sit down and talk to you, Dr. Burton, I just have like 30 more questions and like 40 more podcast interview ideas, and so you just kind of have at this point, you have an open invitation to just come talk at whatever you want to talk about. Hang out with the
Any,
redneck theologians over here.
anytime.
I will say, we last time we talked to you, you threw out the idea of the hillbilly hermeneutics. We
Uh-huh.
have
Oh, that's
started.
been
We have
fun.
started doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. I loved
Yeah.
it. I love it.
Oh yeah.
Hey, we should do a roundtable and get James on.
Oh, yeah,
That'd be fun. Oh yeah.
that'd be a
Yeah,
ton of fun. We could set that up.
yeah. James and I were part of when we were at Highland in Lubbock. We were part of a group that we called the Meeting of the Minds. I don't know if he's ever had that conversation with
Oh,
you, but
I talked to him. On a total side note, he's back in Midland now. He totally took a
I
church in
saw that.
Midland.
I
And so
saw that.
he was going to come on. He was going to do an interview with us last week, but then he had
I
something
think
come up.
last
So
week.
he's
Hmm.
talking. I think he's going to talk about the mark of the beast. But oh yeah, man, us four
Outstanding.
could get on, and it would be great.
Yeah.
I love James, man. He's
Oh,
He was a
I do
yeah.
too.
He
He's
was a great
great.
interview. Oh yeah.
He's great. I played it at
oh
his wedding.
yeah.
Um, I was the classical guitarist there.
Let's see. I remember him telling me about that. So I'm
Hmm.
definitely setting it up right now. After this interview. No, after I email Colossal Biologics over here and ask them to come on the
Biosciences.
podcast.
Yeah.
Biosciences,
Yeah,
Yes.
Biologics.
awesome. Well, good luck. Good luck with that.
After I send that email, I'm totally texting James and be like, "Hey, total side note, after you do the Mark of the Beast, we're gonna get you, Judd, and we're gonna hang out and have a good conversation. That'd be a
Yeah,
fun one to do."
that's an interesting topic in and of itself. One which I've actually been ruminating over lately.
Uh, it's going to be a fun one. I know I can't remember quite. He talked a little bit about the end times on an episode he did with us not too long
Mhm.
ago. And then he kind of mentioned the Mark of the Beast. And then he
Hmm.
kind of he dropped a bomb. I won't lie. I mean, it's in proper James fashion. He dropped this bomb and then he just kind of moved on. And I texted him after the interview and I was like, "Hey, you're going to do a whole episode on the bomb you just dropped about the Mark of
Yeah.
the Beast."
And like we ended the podcast and then we were talking for a little bit afterwards and he dropped even more bombs like that. So
Yeah.
that's when some of
Oh,
the
be a
good stuff
fun one.
happens once the episode's over.
Yeah, I need to
Well,
get back in touch with him. It's been a while since we directly talked.
he's a good guy. I love. Well, Dr. Burton, you want to take a couple minutes and kind of let us know or kind of remind our listeners where they can get a hold of you and that kind of stuff if they have questions. I'll go ahead and also plug. You said Paranormal Big Country. I know it's
Uh-huh.
Central Texas, and I know we have listeners not just in Texas, but you want some cool stories about Central Texas, pick up that book. It's a good one. I like it. I really like it. But go ahead, take it away, Judd.
Thank you. Yes, indeed. People can go to burtonbeyond.net and find a lot of my stuff. I'm actually in the process of moving the my Institute of Biblical Anthropology over to my drjuddburton.com
Hmm.
site. Hoping to have that done within the next month or two. But that's another thing. People can, if you're interested in this stuff, you can take coursework through the Institute. I have 6 programs. Um, you can enroll anytime. Uh, let's see, people can follow me on X and Facebook and uh, I do have a YouTube channel I haven't made content for, but that's about to resume here pretty quickly because everybody wants not only that, but there are people telling me, have been telling me that I need my own podcast, that they want my own, they wanted, they wanted Dr. Judd Burton podcast. So that's going to be launched pretty quickly. And, I've got a new anthology of research articles and essays that I'm going to put out here pretty quickly, tentatively called Domains Beyond, that deal with a whole plethora of things, everything from the Tower of Babel to the demonic aspects of the pandemic.
Ooh, that would be. See,
Kind
just
of
another drop of
new,
a
yeah,
podcast idea.
new directions in biblical anthropology and history.
That's awesome. I'll also say, like, if you listener out there, you follow this guy on Facebook. You've been doing this thing lately with the flaming bull feather. Is that what you're calling
The
it?
Flaming Bull Feather Award. Yes.
That's the funniest thing. Like, and I can't remember. I think I remember how it started because people were commenting on one of your posts or something. But man, that, like, every time I see that, that just cracks me up. And I'll say, keep on, man, keep on. It is.
So
It's
what
a
is
good one.
what's the award? I don't have
Okay,
Facebook, so I don't.
So the flaming, well, I post them on X too. The flaming bull feather is, of course, you guys being from Texas, you know the phrase bull feathers.
Yeah.
The flaming bull feather was sort of born out of. I was on a podcast once, and they were talking about Zachariah Sitchin, and I stopped them and said, just leave the Sitchin mound of bull feathers out of it. And so I filed that away, and there are just things that come across social media that are just bonkers, heretical, not founded in good historical process. I mean, people will make a TikTok video for anything and act as if they have authority in some sort of subject. And I got tired of it. And I'm like, that's it. When I find I don't want to launch ad hominem attacks at people. But when I find a bad, just demonstrably bad idea, historical or theological idea, I'm going to call it out. And so I thought, I'm going to call it the Flaming Bullfeather Award. And I had a bunch of people make graphics for it. And so I've got this library of images that they're fantastic. You've seen them. I mean, you see them.
I'll show you, Caleb.
It's just gold.
If you can see, I don't know if you can
You're
see
gonna
it.
have to forward me a
camera.
picture.
I'll text it to you.
Yeah.
There you go.
But anyway, anything from like this week, it was, so many people latch on to this Da Vinci Code approach to the Council of Nicaea, that the Bible was produced and censored at the Council of Nicaea, when the Council of Nicaea had nothing to do with the canon of Scripture. That was already well in place by the time of Irenaeus, and he articulates it in one of his passages, or a number of passages in Against Heresies. And so I called it out. This idea, it's unfounded, it's ahistorical, and needs to be put down. But it's rampant. Even in church circles, it's rampant. And so that in essence is how the Flaming Bull Feather came to be.
Totally get Facebook, Caleb, just so you can follow Dr. Burton
or follow me on X
or on Twitter.
Yeah.
Or not Twitter.
Yeah, I've got no social media. I haven't had social media in like over a decade.
Well, that's probably a healthy thing.
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us, Dr. Burton. I mean, we've had a blast, and I guarantee if you'll come back on, we'll definitely have you. And man, this was a good one. So thank you so much, Dr. Burton.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you guys for listening to Raising the Wild Ones podcast. I know me and Caleb are just a couple of redneck theologians, right? Kind of came up with that term a little while ago, and it's just kind of making us laugh. But that's really just what we are, right? Every single one of us is a theologian. Sit there and just think about the Bible, and me and Caleb are rednecks, so that makes us redneck theologians. And so we just thank you guys for listening to us. And if you want to just give us a holler and let us know about topics you may want to listen to, or things you may want to say, or if you have an idea for a guest host, or if you yourself want to be a guest host, just drop us a line. Just let us know. Just give us a ring on the old telly. Actually, not really. We don't have a cell phone number, right? But we do have an email, and you can send us an email, right, at raisingwildonespodcast@gmail.com. There'll be a link for that podcast down in the description. And so just kind of click on that and just let us know what you guys want to hear from us. And we like to hear from you guys too. We like to know what you guys think of our podcast. And so also just tell your friends, share it on social media. Just let people know when you're sitting down having a cup of coffee with your hunting buddies or fishing buddies. Just say, hey guys, listen to this podcast. It's these two rednecks, and they're kind of weird sometimes, but it's fine because they talk about some cool stuff. And so just let people know, and that's how the word gets out, and that's how it gets shared. So we just thank you guys so much for your support and for listening to us. And yeah, tune in next time for more from the Redneck Theologians.
Hey, Wild Ones. Do you love what you've been hearing? Our deep dives into theology, Bible stories, and the Word of God? If so, we need your help. For just $6 a month, which is less than a cup of coffee these days, you can join our Patreon community. It's a simple but powerful way to support our mission of sharing the gospel with as many people as possible. And when you join, you'll get some awesome perks like early access to episodes, detailed show notes, and even biblically accurate coloring pages you won't find anywhere else, trust me. Plus, we're giving 10% of everything we receive straight to missions, so your support goes even further. So click the link below in the show notes and join us on Patreon today. Let's keep raising the wild ones together.